David, welcome to the show, brother.
It's good to be here.
We have a lot to talk about today. But before we dive in, we want to give some guys context into who you are, both professionally, but also as a man, because not everybody might not be familiar with your band. So give us a brief snapshot of your dad bio.
My dad bio is right now a lot of gardening. We're just finishing up picking a ton of peppers. We got some jalapenos and some death spirals and some
death spirals.
Yeah, my son picked them out. They're great. They're kind of like habaneros, and
okay.
Mix them up with carrots and other stuff and make an incredible hot sauce.
Right on. Well, with the name like Death Spiral, it's got to be hot.
Yeah, it is. But I think I've burned my taste buds out traveling overseas so much and overdoing it. I do a lot of things in moderation. Hot sauce is not one of those things that I do. I am getting ready. I can say this on air because it probably won't air before tomorrow, but my daughter's birthday, where I'm putting up a zip line from this structure that my dad and I built kind of inside of two trees. I can't cut any branches off those trees because they're so nostalgic to Stella, who's going to be 11. Ava's going to be 14. She's in a musical this weekend. I'm teaching her ukulele and guitar simultaneously. And I really want her to like, she gravitates towards like rock music a little bit. It'd be awesome if she was a rocker someday. Jack plays the drums. He's going to be 16. And the only thing I know about parenting, I haven't really read any books, is to be there and try to enjoy what they're enjoying.
Yeah.
Try to get them to enjoy new things. And it's been such a great run so far.
That's awesome. Well, you're in the thick of it with those age ranges for sure. It's a lot of fun. Those are fun years.
Yeah.
Challenging years, but fun years.
And everybody says that, challenging years. And I felt invincible my whole life. Like, I've been a great dad. Man, the first time your teenage girl is like, Dad, stop hugging me. Why do you hug me so much? I was like, what do you mean? Why do I hug you so much? I've hugged you like this for the last 13 years and I haven't changed anything. Like that hits you differently. I wasn't ready for it. Even though
it's like over the summer, like
yeah,
they change.
And that's not just one. They're like teaming up on me now with all their new things and all these new challenges in life. And just trying to sort, hopefully they'll always bring stuff to me. Like Jack, whenever he messes up, he tells me right away. He's like, Dad, I messed up. I did this. And I hope it stays this way.
Right on. And just to clarify, your band is Remedy Drive. So I'm sure a lot of guys listening have heard the name or probably into the music. How did you get into that?
I just fell in love with writing songs as a kid. When I was my daughter's age, when I was 13, I listened to a lot of Keith Green. He's this piano player. He's the only rock music that we were allowed to listen to. Other than that, it was like a cappella. But then I started discovering rock and roll illicitly in high school and just fell in love with it. I remember my mom's face when she realized I learned how to bend a guitar string. She loved it, but at the same time, she's like, wait a second, am I okay with this? Because they had kind of thrown it all away with the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. The whole thing for them was just one thing. It was one culture, and rock and roll was part of that culture for them. But they came around and became really supportive, and I just started writing songs about whatever I was going through. There's nothing like it. I can't describe what it's like to write a song, to bring into existence something that I heard in my head. Like it's such a remarkable thing to get to do.
Yeah. So we discussed a little bit off air. I grew up listening to your music, grew up listening to you perform at Life Light, and grew up listening to all of your albums. And yeah. I can honestly say, I've listened to a lot of bands, I've listened to a lot of Christian bands, seen a lot perform. And I don't think that there is a single band out there who I've seen have more fun performing on stage and get more passionate performing on stage than you guys. So it's just been awesome to watch you guys. So yeah, I mean, do you write all of the music for your band, and where does all that come from?
Thanks, Jacob. Yeah, I do. And my brother Philip and I started off, we had a good working relationship early on in the way we crafted songs together, and then we really strayed away from it for a long time. And now we're back at it. He writes incredible riffs, like on the bass, or just these little ideas. And I get to sort through until there's one I love, and then I try to turn it into something with lyric and melody. And I don't, like, right now it's been a dry spell. I don't really have anything being birthed other than some great guitar riffs in this room. I'm playing a lot of electric guitar right now, and you just kind of wait and you take notes in movies. You take notes when somebody's speaking, podcasts, other songs. I'm just constantly trying to collect really cool and important things people say or people do, and then it just kind of flows back out.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess I never really thought of it that way, so it's kind of awesome to hear it from.
Yeah, it's like curating. Like, I don't look at it. I look at everything, all art. I look at it the same way I look at like being a great chef. Like, they just take things that exist and they combine them and turn them into something new. And that's all anybody's ever been doing. Nobody's made dirt since the creator. So all we're doing is like repackaging and reforming and refurbishing and restoring things.
Yeah, that's true. Do you feel like you became more attuned to observing life after fatherhood than before?
Oh yeah. Like, I was very impatient as a dad for each new stage. You know, I was sneaking my kids chocolate before it was permissible, because there's something about seeing somebody else experience something for the first time. Star Wars in particular, right? Yeah. They were watching Star Wars when they were 2 and 5, and maybe even less than that. And I mean, they love Star Wars. There was this one summer we just powered through the entire Clone Wars cartoons.
You got to do it.
And just anything like that, you just seeing life and hope and expectation and sorrow through the eyes of a child is life-changing.
Yeah.
But do you have throughout your entire career, I know a lot of the performances that you do are in the Midwest, do you have like a specific performance or an album or a song that's meant the most to you throughout your career?
Well, you mentioned performance, and this is in the top 5 for sure. And because you both are from South Dakota, one time at Life Light, which is a large outdoor festival in South Dakota, you're always just it's so stressful at festivals because you're looking at the weather all the time. And this particular day, it just looked kind of, it might be bad, it might be. But in the middle of our second song, you could hear the tornado sirens, and it was a great crowd too. And they were all pressed up front. And then we played our song Commodity right after that. I didn't think they'd let us, but they let us. A lot of people left, but the people that stayed were all in the rain. So I took out all my electronics, took these in-ears out, and I ran down at the end of the platform and sang with them. And that was kind of right at the beginning of when we started using our music to fight against trafficking. And that was like the flagship song for us that was focusing on modern day slavery. And to see all these people singing it along with us. And then I jumped out into the audience and crowd surfed, drenched. And then right after that, my son Jack was with me. He's only maybe 7. Just meeting all these other people, and you knew like this person here in the autograph line is legit because they're drenched to the bone right now. So it was a great experience.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot of people talk about that specific year, and I've heard people compare it to Woodstock. You know, people were just playing in the mud, and got kind of crazy for a Christian music festival anyway.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's always just been so fun to watch you guys perform, and you just have so much passion in the way that you perform. You know, you're interacting with your band, you're interacting with the audience, you're jumping over keyboards, you're jumping off your amps, you're just having a great time. So it's awesome. But I guess I can kind of use this as a segue. You had mentioned your song Commodity, and that entire album is actually probably my favorite album of you. I just used to listen to it on repeat, and I just love the music throughout that. And like you said, I think that was kind of your starting point for using your music to fight against trafficking. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about the Exodus Road, how you got started with that, what it's all about. Just kind of dive in on that for us.
The Exodus Road is a counter-trafficking organization, a non-government organization, so a charity that we use covert gear and spy cameras to find evidence of trafficking. We go into places where we suspect there's trafficking. We go into red light districts or clubs or sometimes villas in the countryside or in the jungle. And we essentially try to capture evidence of criminal networks that are selling, especially kids, for sex. And and most of my experience has been with teenage girls, but we try to find evidence of that, and then we use that evidence to partner with authorities to make raids against the people responsible for doing this. And that started right after we had written most of that song Commodity, which Commodity, the song, came from, I don't know if either of you remember Kony, Joseph Kony, the warlord in Uganda.
Yeah.
And he's kidnapping children and forcing them to fight. And I was so moved by the work of Invisible Children, an organization that helped at least lessen his influence. I watched Machine Gun Preacher. I watched 12 Years a Slave. I watched Blood Diamond. And when you see Blood Diamond, when you see Leonardo DiCaprio right there with the real hero of the story is the father, and the father's, his son's been kidnapped and taken, and his son's been forced to kill, and he's doing drugs, listening to gangster rap, and the son's going to kill the dad, and the dad's holding his head and said, "You're a good boy." And that belief in the fact that this kid's not a lost cause, all of that was at the beginning of wanting to do something more than just sing about important things.
It is important. We talked about this off air, that we're talking to primarily men today. And I think this is such an important message for men to hear, because whether we like to admit it or not, men drive the sex trafficking industry, right? Men's insatiable appetite for sex. And I think that a lot of guys, it's so easy for you to, click on an image that is appealing or get sucked into, where I'm going. Just there's pornography is readily available on the internet. And I know a lot of guys fall into that trap. It's so easy to do, but I think we've got to be reminded that every innocent click adds another log to the fire that's fueling the sex industry and the trafficking industry. And we cannot continue as men, as leaders in society, we cannot continue to brush this under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist and pretend that we're not to blame. And I'm not saying that the men listening or the men on this call are directly to blame, but just men in general. It's an important topic.
Yeah, it's annoying that our particular species carries so much weight for this.
Yeah.
And it's hard to connect the dots, whether it's, because there's an obvious difference between prostitution and trafficking. Those are two different things, and there's a big overlap in the middle. And the same with, there is a percentage of online exploitation that is trafficking, and the majority of that is consumed in the United States of America. The majority of online children being trafficked and being viewed happens mostly in our country. And so without the demand, there wouldn't be a need for the supply. Just like the drugs coming into the United States, 80% of the cocaine coming from Colombia through Latin America, through Central America, is, it's coming here. And it's easy to point the finger at different cultures and different people, at all kinds of slavery. Like my cell phone, for instance, I found out from a refugee that was in my house from Uganda what coltan was, and it's in my song Warlike. Coltan's a mineral similar to blood diamonds. It's a blood mineral, and they need it. People making these phones need that, and it comes at the cost of children being forced to mine it, at the threat of having their arm cut off by a machete. And I don't know all the answers for that. I live in a world superpower that's responsible for so much beauty and so much good, but is also responsible for so much misery in the world. And coming to grips with the fact that I'm part of a supply chain, I'm part of a consumer culture that drives slavery and has us at a point in history where slavery is more prevalent than it's ever been before. That's not something I can do nothing about. It's something I can do very little about, but I'm not going to live today and let my children know that their dad in the prime of his life didn't do anything. So they'll be able to tell their kids, hey, your grandpa did a little bit, and I'm content with that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's easy for us in our culture to overlook, is just that supply chain aspect that you were talking about. Whether it's for pornography or any of the products that we consume, is just, okay, where's all of the things that are going into this actually coming from?
Yeah.
And it's tough to be a part of that supply chain. And then, I think we just need to be conscious of what we're consuming and how it's getting in front of us, and be a part of the change from that aspect too. So only supporting the right companies and the right organizations, and being a part of fixing those problems.
And that's where it gets a little bit hairy, because we all love deregulation because we can make a lot more money. We love deregulation, but say I'm building a ton of buildings and I can get products for way less to, construction products. If I don't order them for, instead of ordering from China, it's easy for business owners, for corporations, to duck a lot of the regulations that are pretty lax towards slavery, to be honest. And so as a consumer, I don't know where my jeans are made from. And I don't think that's your responsibility or my responsibility. We can put pressure on our elected officials because it's us, it's our voice. But as business owners, I think for the men here that are business owners, where's your stuff coming from? Where's your shirts coming from? If you're ordering shirts, well, I know my shirt's made by someone that's come out of slavery, part of an organization that's helping to rehabilitate survivors of trafficking. And it took me a while to get there, but it's going to cost more. And that's why I really, that phrase from scripture that says the love of money is the root of all evil. I do believe that now. I didn't quite understand it till I started seeing how things are. Why are things the way they are? Well, everybody wants to make maximum profit. That's why. Yeah. And a lot of times it's at the expense of poor, impoverished, desperate, exiled people that are running for their lives from violence that we played a part in creating.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're fueling the fire either with direct clicks to watch something, or needing the very latest and greatest, piece of technology. And yeah,
I said, because I was getting a little bit preachy, a little didactic in this song, Warlike. And at one point I said, without the demand, there'd be no need for supply. You got blood on your hands, man, there's a plank in your eye. But when I said that, I knew that the irony is that saying there's a plank in somebody's eye is like saying, well, there's a mote in my eye. And saying, what did I say? Oh, I forget the lyric. Is this a blood diamond? I can't tell. I own blood minerals. They're in my cell phone. How did we accumulate such wealth? What if the war criminal is myself? And that was a hard lyric to write, even harder to record and release. But I want to take ownership from my participation in a world superpower, or an empire, however you want to describe it, that is causing, that has a chance. We have a chance to be good. And I would love to see that.
This podcast is part of the Edify Podcast Network. Edify is a faith-inspiring app that brings together thousands of the best Christian podcasts in one place for your listening enjoyment. Cut through the noise and grow your faith by diving into the world's top Christian podcasts today. Download the Edify app for free from the App Store or Google Play, or by going to edify.app. That's edifi.app.
What's the future look like for the Exodus Road and for organizations like that? How do you think people can be more conscious? How can people help out with all of these different kinds of organizations? Just what's the future look like down the road for these kind of organizations?
Well, I don't have the optimism that some of my peers in the counter-trafficking movement have. I don't think we're going to end slavery in my lifetime, or really anytime soon. It would take radical shift in the way we view the most vulnerable in our society. And I was really hopeful maybe 5 years ago, but these last 5 years have put a real damper on that hope in terms of just the selfishness and the self-serving way that we are. We just have this selfishness that's hard to overcome. the future, I believe, is going to be your generation and the kids coming up behind, taking everything they've heard and have been taught, but then they see their parents like not doing, for instance, something as simple as, hey, stand in line, wait your turn. A kid would know they're a bad kid if they didn't do that. But when it comes to business, when it comes to politics, when it comes to everything else, the kids see their parents, when it really, really matters, doing the exact opposite of what they were taught as kids and saying, no, me first, my people first, my way first. Let's push them to the back. And I believe that kids in their teens right now, and I meet a lot of them, college students right now in 2021, they see through that. And I think there's a creativity and there's a disillusionment with the way things are, which Hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. And I see that hope, that it looks like anger at the way things are, but courage to do something about it. And I think the future leaders are going to just continue to tear a little corner off the darkness and celebrate small victories.
I want to go back and talk about some of your covert actions, if you will. I mean, are you literally putting yourself in harm's way? And sounds like you're meeting with the actual girls that are being sold, and kind of talk us through that. What's that like?
At first, it was really devastating and uncomfortable. You know, I really respect Matt Parker, who co-founded the Exodus Road with his wife, Laura. He puts on this different persona, and he's the one that trained me in Thailand in 2014. And he just asked, hey, where can I find young girls? Where are they selling young girls? And it's really hard. The first time you say that out loud, it's really hard to say that. But we talk to taxi drivers, we talk to gangsters, we just find out. You get comfortable with asking people. Sometimes it's going up into a hidden floor of a hotel. I found this one particular hotel in Thailand that the Russian or Uzbekistani mafia owned. And they take you up, and there's a little gangster there that frisks you. He's looking for weapons or recording gear. And then there's a hidden floor and just girls sitting on beds from Brazil, from Colombia, from Uganda or Kenya, from all over the world, because there's a market. There's that idea that, you know, that there's something special about having a girl from a different part of the world, and they're just stuck there. Or it's like a dance club, and we go into a dance club, you ask the same questions. Or it's a brothel. Sometimes it's a locked brothel where they'll lock a gate behind you. In Latin America, there's teenage girls that will sell tourists little bits of coffee for like 10 cents. And then if you talk to them, if you know the right questions, you find out they're also selling cocaine or synthetic ecstasy type drugs and sex. And so I walked right out of one of those public squares past one of those, you know, those military guys with, you know, a machine gun. And they know what's going on. There's no way they don't know that I'm a tourist walking down the 2 blocks with a child. And then she'll escort me up to the second floor of a little building. They'll lock this gate behind us. And the whole time you're running footage and you're being followed by your team, or your team's right there with you. It all looks different. Like one of my scariest moments was in this back alley at the beginning of 2020 in Thailand. And it's rare for a white guy to be in those scenarios, because this was less expensive because it wasn't part of the tourist industry there. So sex tourism really drives a lot of the tourism in a lot of the cities I go to, and men from here will fly there to get away with what they're doing there for cheap. But this back alley, they would just pull a car up, and the customer would pull his car into the back alley, and then, you know, 20 girls would walk up from the shadows of the alley and present themselves, and the guy would pick one girl and he'd drive away with her. And that was scary for me, because I don't know how to work that environment. It was a different environment, and a trafficker ended up driving me and a 15-year-old girl like 10 minutes away to their hotel. That they have this hotel that they use. But it was a great case, because I found that there was a dance club right next to this hotel I was taken to that also was trafficking girls from Africa, and then some from Uzbekistan or Romania or Russia. And so hopefully that case led to some, I don't know, always get to know what happens because of something I'm involved in, but I'm hopeful that that case led to helping dismantle this, whatever this cooperation between different gangsters was.
Wow. Sounds like this could be a movie.
Yeah, honestly, stories like this are, they're crazy to hear, and I know they're hard to talk about and hard for us to conceptualize. But one of the crazy things for me is, you hear stories like this that are hard to hear and hard to talk about, and then we just need to take a step back and also understand the magnitude, at which these are happening, like the quantity of people that are stuck in these situations, and understand that and know that it's bigger than we think it is. And then on top of that, it's easy, I think, sometimes for us to just shrug it off and say, oh, well, this is only happening in the, in third world countries and remote parts of the world. But that's just not true either. It's hard for us to, again, to take a step back and realize that these things might be happening right down the street. I mean, my pastor in church yesterday just talked about, he has a buddy who works in the police force who they busted a sex trafficking ring just down the road from where I live. And, 50% of those being trafficked are little boys too, right? Same as little girls. And it's hard for people sometimes, I think, to conceptualize that these things are happening across the globe and right up the road. It's hard for us, and it's necessary for us to kind of take that into consideration as parents.
Well, and because of that, it's important for us to keep our eyes peeled, right? Can't just get lulled into this sense of it's happening somewhere overseas and I don't need to worry about it. Like you said, it could be right around the corner. You just don't know.
Yeah. And to be educated correctly. 2020 was an incredible year for disinformation in general, but specifically when it comes to sex trafficking, the amount of absolute bowling out there on the internet, like the Wayfair scandal, the Pizzagate, all of these really extreme, ridiculously fabricated ideas of what sex trafficking is. Not to say that there can't be extreme examples of it, or the idea of somebody just trying to kidnap kids at Walmart. That's not what's happening. If that does happen from time to time, that's kidnapping. It does happen. But by and large, 90% of sex trafficking in the United States of America happens at first at home by kids that are abused. That's where it starts. It happens at Christian camps like Kanakuk down south of you by 5 hours. All these parents sending their kids to a camp, and the leader of that camp protecting and signing NDAs so that I think hundreds of boys got abused by one particular camp leader, and they covered it up. They should have fired him after the first complaint, but they left him on staff and gave him a chance to continue to abuse children. A festival director at a Christian festival in the East got arrested for sex trafficking. We have this hesitancy to speak truth to power, especially when people are part of our tribe. But our tribe is doing damage. People in the Christian industry are doing damage just like anywhere else. So it doesn't happen one particular way. So it's important to educate ourselves, but also educate our kids. I have a hard time sending my kids to events like that, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And I don't let them out the house without saying, hey, just because that guy's a leader doesn't mean, I say, especially because he's a leader, I want you to be more careful.
That is such a great point and great reminder. Yeah, you cannot be, just because of somebody's title or position, you cannot just assume that they're a good guy or a good gal.
And the higher the position, people just don't get positions by getting positions. They get positions because, I know I'm a rock star. There's ego in it. And there's this hesitancy to acknowledge that. Why does this guy want this book deal or want to, is it just to help us? That's what the pharmaceutical industry said. Oh, they just want to, with opiates in particular, I just watched a special on it. We just want to help people. They're also addicting people. I don't want to just trust and assume that this person, just because they're saying the right things, is doing the right things. And that's why I think it's important that the Mars Hill podcast came out. There's a cult right across the street from me, right across the interstate here, called Remnant, and they're abusing kids. And there's people in my neighborhood that are part of it, and I want to help them out of it. Now there's an HBO special on it right now, and you can see my kids' high school from it, but they're getting to that. And I don't want people to think I'm saying that particular cult is abusing kids in this particular way, just in physically, more so for sure, mentally and spiritually. But
yeah. And I had another question and it just popped out of my head. Have you been in all of your, I don't want to call them adventures, but have you been in a situation where a man was caught red-handed, or does that happen after you do your thing?
Yeah, we're generally not getting the customers. We're generally waiting, which is hard to do, so we can get as high up the criminal network that we can. There was one particular trafficker. He had a shirt on that had the Statue of Liberty flipping the bird on his shirt, and he was a young guy, 20s maybe, and he was running a synthetic drug operation out of his complex, and he had this big security dude, and I paid him everything we agreed on, but then he wanted a tip, so I had to go up, get more money. So I have a ton of great footage of us paying him, which it was kind of a gift from him to ask for more money so we could make sure we're all in position for another payoff. And because that's sometimes the only way to make it stick is if you have that. And if there's a conversation about, now, what is this for again? And that's great. It's easy to be kind of the stumbling, barely can speak Spanish gringo. We call it the gringo effect. It really, it makes them really more comfortable than they would be because they're dodgy. They're smart. They know that the cops are looking for them. And a lot of them run by aliases. So on this particular trip, there was 4 traffickers. We had 4 parties, 4 get-togethers to try to draw them out of the woodwork. And they all 4 got arrested. Not the night of, though, because I always want to be there for that part, which my wife thinks is stupid, but I kind of want to get arrested too because I'm a customer and kind of roughed up a little bit. But alas, I haven't been there for that particular part, but I did see it all on video, the helicopters, the gates getting kicked in, the SWAT team, busting them up. Like as soon as I got back to the States, it was 2 days after my last get together, I saw that particular guy get arrested and he cried. He was sad. I don't hate him. I thought I would. I do not hate him. I want something different for him. I want him to go to prison and I want him to be rehabilitated somehow.
Yeah. But that's got to be rewarding at the same time to see that your work is making a difference like that.
Because I've talked to the girls that he brought, I spent a lot of time talking with them and he's destroying their lives. He thinks he's giving them opportunity. He's destroying them. And so seeing him behind bars means, well, there's a lot of girls that aren't going to be impacted by that guy. They're going to find somebody else, I hope, that's going to give them a real opportunity instead of him giving, just using them for his profits.
Mm-hmm. Are there, whether it's the traffickers or the victims, you see a common thread?
Yeah, desperation. I don't see the greed side as much, but I see desperate people making decisions that people that aren't desperate wouldn't make. And an example for me that, I can see myself in either scenario, the trafficker or the family that gets trafficked. Like if I was coming up from Mexico, I'd be like that guy that put, I would think I'm a strong swimmer. I'm just gonna put my child in the back of my shirt and swim over. If I was desperate enough, the fire and the violence behind me on that path and the hope that someone loving will take my cause if I make it across would drive me to do desperate things that I'd swim across. And that picture of that dad and baby that were dead really haunts me. And that happens to us in other places too. There's families desperately fleeing violence in Burma. We call it Myanmar now. And it's Rohingya Muslim refugees that are running for their lives from being annihilated by the primarily Buddhist government. And then some Christian Karen as well, running for their lives. And a bunch of them paid to get on a boat there's a difference between smuggling and trafficking. So they thought they had human smugglers on this boat that promised them, we'll get you down to Malaysia. But instead the boat sold them into a detention camp in Thailand and sold their kids into slavery on, whether it's fishing or shrimp boat slavery or sex trafficking. And people say, well, who in the right mind would get on a boat? Well, your village is burned behind you because of a violence you had nothing to do with. And giving people that benefit of the doubt and wanting to understand, and talking to so many girls coming out of Venezuela, seeing what they're hearing about their life story leading up to where they end up, helps you understand why they would take such ridiculous risk.
Mm. Yeah, it's hard to put yourself in their shoes, but like you said,
and I wish my biggest frustration with Christianity in America is it's abnormal for people to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. It doesn't seem like preachers are doing it. You know, there's so much blame. There's so much anger against the poorest of the poor in the world. And yet poor people are praying. You know, I saw this one documentary of a family coming up through Central America into Mexico. And then they were reading the same Bible that we read in a different language. And they're praying for someone to take their cause instead of the cause and the rich and the powerful, and instead of the obsession. And I think when we talk about manliness, I don't think an obsession with security and comfort is manly at all. And all that machismo, I have no real interest in it. There's an idolatry that's snuck in, as it does. It's easy, but this obsession with our safety and our comfort, even in our slogans, you know, safe for the whole family. Why is that so important to us, to have everything safe for the whole family? I don't want that. I want my kids to live like Martin Luther King Jr. said, to live with a kind of dangerous unselfishness. And that's going to look different for anybody else hearing this than it does for me. It's going to look different for me than it did for him, because the day after he said that, they killed him. And I'm 3 years older than he was now. But I want that for my kids. And sometimes I feel like, what right do I have as a musician? At that festival that we've all been to, an 18-year-old girl came up to me with her mom and said, I'm going to India because of something you said several years ago. And I didn't know how to feel about that. Because what if this girl lose her life in India? Well, what better way to live and spend and pour out your life? Isaiah the prophet said, if you spend yourself on behalf of the oppressed, then your light will rise like the noonday. Mm-hmm. And I have a little bit of currency to spend. And I'm going to spend it on something. I'm going to spend it on my own safety and comfort, on an obsession with people that are like me in my tribe to be represented, or I can instead spend the currency of my life and my time and my art and our microphones on the poor and the powerless, because that is what is emphasized in Scripture 2,100 times and emphasized from pulpits in America. It's such a shameful ratio of what it is in Scripture.
Yeah, well, it's having a kingdom mindset.
Yeah.
Like you said, if you're...
Because it's flipped, right? The kingdom's flipped upside down.
Yeah, and that's another big problem to solve.
I don't know how to solve it, man, other than keep on pouring new wines in old wineskins, but I think it's rotten from the inside out. You know, Jesus kind of made fun of everything we do. Everything we do, Jesus already made fun of. It's like he was parodying, you know, Christianity in 2021. It's like his whole time on earth, the only people he got angry with were the people that do exactly what we like do with such confidence. Like all the boards of directors at churches, it's all the wealthy business people. And Jesus said, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Reserve those seats for the poorest of the poor and let them help with how to treat. And if the poorest of the poor were on all our boards, we wouldn't be spending 99% of our finances alone, not to mention the human resources, but the finances that go into church buildings. All we do is build church buildings so that we can talk, pray, sing, and then try to get other people to talk, pray, and sing alongside us. Whereas Jesus says, I want you to use that for the poorest of the poor. And so many times people have two things they say in response to that. They're like, well, Jesus said the poor you will have with you always. Okay. Okay. Like Deuteronomy is what he's quoting, says, therefore go and take their cause. And there's so much, it's very unpopular in Christian circles to talk the way I'm talking. Because people say, well, our job is just to tell people about Jesus and to tell people about salvation. Man, that is not true. It is not true at all. Jesus' half brother blew that out of the water over and over again in his little letter. James, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry, I go on tangents, man.
Oh, you've got my wheels turning now. I mean, I feel like we could go off on take this thing in a whole different direction. Because you're right. Everything you said is absolutely right.
And if you're taking your kids to Sunday school on Sunday and then like something on Tuesday and Wednesday, maybe most of your Saturdays, you don't have any time left to do the works of the gospel. You don't have all your time that you have doing like religious things are the talking and praying. And Jesus and the Creator said through the prophets, shut up with your songs. Just take a break from that for a while and go and do justice, and then come back and start talking and praying and reading again. Like, why do we need to talk and pray and read so much if we're not going to do what we're reading? Which Jesus says, these are the important things. Love the Lord God with all your heart, soul, and mind, your neighbors, yourself. And then the evangelical of year zero said to him, who's my neighbor? And Jesus would have got accused of being a race baiter by bringing up the Samaritan as a hero. He makes the hero of the story somebody from a different religion. I love that about him. Makes the hero of this story this Samaritan that everybody else, the machismo politician types of the day would call them dogs. And he tells this story about this Samaritan that put his own life at risk to help the guy that was beat up on the side of the road. And he said, this is what it means to know me. In fact, Jeremiah the prophet said, he took the cause of the oppressed. Isn't that what it means to know me, says the Lord God Almighty? And so I don't care if your bio says follower of Christ or personal relationship with Jesus Christ. We'll know by what it looks like.
Yeah.
When Jesus says, I was naked, I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was imprisoned and you came and you visited me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know Mark and I have discussed it on this podcast previously, but when we stand before Jesus on Judgment Day, we're being judged on our actions, right? We're not being judged on sitting in the church pew every Sunday. We're being judged on what we take out of that door and put into practice, and on our actions. And our actions are all written on the book of life, and there's no hiding them.
And I don't even know what that means, man. I see those parables. I'm not a theologian, and I don't pretend to be a theologian, but I know this emphasis on living with dangerous unselfishness is so important to the writers of Scripture. So therefore, I think it is really important to the Creator of the universe.
Dangerous unselfishness. I like that.
Yeah, you got to read his last speech or listen to it. I've wept several times listening to it.
You raise a good point, though. I mean, I think it's especially for men, because men. Oh, let me back up. We should definitely, bury ourselves in Scripture. But when it comes to like reading books, like guys watching, I've got a stack of books in the background there. It's great to feed into yourself, but I think that the church, we're so consumed with feeding ourselves, whether it's through, book after book or small group after small group. At some point, you have to take action. You have to take everything that you've been teaching yourself and learning and actually apply it.
Yeah.
So it's just, like you said, that unselfishness. Yeah, that kind of hit home. I needed to hear that.
And you're never going to be ready. It's
Right.
never the right time. My kids were so young when I started doing this. I didn't, it's not as dangerous as I thought it would be, but I'm like, what if I lose my life? Well, that'd be an amazing legacy to leave. My dad died trying to rescue kids from slavery.
Right.
And I'm not, I didn't have any training, and I don't have my act together. I don't, I talk a big game, but I'm a mess. I fail consistently, but that doesn't disqualify me. Doesn't disqualify anybody listening. That's a very legitimate reason why not to get involved, because you don't feel ready or qualified, but it's not true. It seems true, but it's not.
Yeah. Analysis paralysis. I think too many of us, myself included, we spend way too much time trying to reach perfection before we take that next step, whether it's, feeling like you're finally ready to have kids, or feeling like you're finally ready to go out and start your own business, or you know, whatever that big thing is, going out and sharing the gospel, like that's intimidating as heck if you've never done it. Going out and sharing the word with strangers who maybe are not open to it at all. And it just, sometimes you just got to get out there and do it. You don't have to be rehearsed. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just take that first step, and then it's going to get easier over time. And I'm sure that's been the case with you and what you're doing with Exodus Road. It's like you said, you're not trained, you know, you're not an expert necessarily, but you just took that step, and then you learn some things over time to where now, you know, you feel equipped and ready to go into pretty much any circumstance, I would imagine.
Yeah, it has changed. I have to dial back because that muscle is so, it's, you know, we all have that muscle of taking action, but now, one time I got in trouble for bringing Panera bread to school. I thought it was okay, but like that same justice and that rose up in me with the principal of the elementary school. And I was like, man, I got to keep that thing in check. But what happens for you when you take that initial step, specifically with this movement, the anti-trafficking movement, the road will pave itself before you, and you don't have to have it figured out. Like even from 2 years ago, I still can't believe I'm getting to do the things I'm doing today. I didn't plan it. It paved itself in front of me like the waters parted for Moses of old, and he led 1 million enslaved people to their freedom on dry ground across that sea. And I know it doesn't seem possible because it's only, you know, I didn't think that I could take a risk and not have a real job and have a rock band, but it worked out. But it didn't work out like I hoped it would work out. You know, I wanted to be a household name, but because I wasn't, I was able to leave our record deal and end up stumbling into this work. And as a dad, it's because when I watched that documentary on boy soldiers, my daughter, when she was 5, says, "Dad, why not God protect those boys?" And I believe in the potential of anybody that's hearing this. If you do something small, like go serve a couple meals to some homeless people with a group that exists wherever you live, or go help whoever it is in your city that's getting ready to welcome people that are coming over from Afghanistan. There's going to be a lot of them coming to Nashville. So how do you get ready to help? How do you go eat at an Afghan restaurant and then be part of there, and maybe just be somebody that helps assist with some of the really logistical needs that somebody has showing up in a foreign land. It seems small. It will always seem insignificant. But really, that's the only way anything's ever happened in the world, is ordinary people doing something that seems insignificant at the time. And that's how the needle turns.
Mm-hmm. And one small encounter with another person can spark sometimes a movement. At the very least, it can change that person's life. And you would never have any idea.
Yeah.
But you just plant a seed, and you don't know where God's going to take that seed.
Yeah. And even in what I believe with my music sometimes, because people would wish that we were more explicit in our songs, I think I love that planting a seed metaphor. But before that, even there's the getting the ground ready, what's it called? I'm a gardener, but I don't even know what you call it. Breaking up the soil, tilling the ground. Yeah. And being content that that's my contribution. Like we talked about earlier, I want to be there for the raid, and I haven't got to yet, but I played my role, man. I played my role the best I could.
Jacob, jump in here, man. I don't want to hijack the conversation.
No, you're good. I'm over here just soaking all this in. It's all awesome. And, David, nobody can say that you're not living out what you're preaching here. It's just amazing to sit here and hear all of the stories, and, maybe adventure is not the right word, like Mark said, but you're out there doing it all. You're having the adventures. You've lived the rock star life a little bit. You've now taken on the role of getting out and being a part of all of these things, taking direct action, and, just living it out in your own life. So it's just awesome to see. But, I guess, the only other tangent question I had, just, as you do all these things, you're as busy as anyone. How has all this played a direct role in your journey through fatherhood? Like how has it played into your role as a dad?
The only way I know how to parent is to bring my kids alongside. My daughter wears a shirt probably 2 times a week. She's in the 5th grade. It's an elephant, and it's made in India by, the shirt is a Remedy Drive shirt made in India by women that have come out of trafficking.
Wow.
By an organization that's helping rehabilitate them and give them art therapy, trauma therapy, and all of our band's merchandise we buy that way. And my kids label it all. So when we get a little elephant that we sell at our table, it has a label that one of my kids wrote on it. And they know these places because I took them 3 years ago to Thailand and Cambodia. So they got to see a lot of these places, kids their age that are being offered a second chance. Women with children that are sewing the kimonos that we sell at our table. And so I involved them, and I got down on my knee with Stella and I said, look at that building there. I was here 2 years ago, and there was a mafia that ran a brothel out of there, right that window there. See that? They're gone because I got to help take them down. So they got to see some of these places I've been from a distance, of course. We got a little too close the first night. I accidentally booked a hotel in the middle of a red light district because one of the places we were going in the morning was this amazing coffee house in Bangkok that's run by one of these organizations that we buy from. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll get something close to that. And I forgot that it was just in the heart of everything. So when we showed up at midnight, like our tuk-tuk, which is like a motorcycle chariot, took us right through it all. And so the kids got a rude awakening, but it really impacted
culture.
Yeah. They were shell shocked by the flight. They all watched 3 movies each on the flight over and didn't really sleep, but I'm veering off. I don't know how it's impacted my parenting other than bringing them alongside. And I'm so thankful because people are like, isn't that risky to take your kids into these dangerous areas? And I asked my wife, it was a fight. It looks all nice on social media, but she was so furious with me that I rented 2 scooters, 2 motorcycles. And then she never rides. So I was like, hey, it's just one road. Like, we're going to this safe house out in the countryside. I was like, they're going to meet us by the side of this highway. And I was like, look on the map. The highway just goes, you don't have to make any turns. So I have my 2 girls on my motorcycle and she's got my son on. But what I didn't realize when I booked it was that road was just one of the most trafficked roads ever. Like, trucks kind of bumping your elbow and we're going between cars. And she just womaned up and held there. She was so angry the whole time at me, but she got the job done. And the kids saw that fortitude in their mom, and they saw everything that we've given up. They know I gave up a record label and some degree of fame probably to do it this way instead.
Man. Well, to the question, isn't it dangerous to take your kids into those areas? I mean, you could answer by saying, how dangerous would it be to let them live a life and grow up not having any idea that stuff exists?
Man, that's where I was getting. That was where I was running to. I forgot the back half of what I was saying. Yeah, isn't this dangerous? But if you see that cult thing on HBO, you're going to see the neighborhood we live in. It's fake. It's not real. This is not real. It's a bubble. They call it the Brentwood bubble. It's south of Nashville. What if they grew up thinking that this is what's real? And this is what's to chase after, all these BMWs and Lexuses and Mercedes, even though I have the Mercedes Sprinter van. I have an AMG sticker on the back of it, which is their aftermarket group, just as a joke. But for any car enthusiast, it's like a souped up engine, but it doesn't have it. Dave Moore, our guitar player, just gave me the AMG letters to put on there. But the kids would think that's real, and that chasing wealth and success and fame, that's real and that's important. But they got to see how they felt. And I'll never forget how they felt. And what they saw in happy people, joyful people that have nothing. And that's, I don't regret it.
Yeah, no, honestly, I love that approach too. It's just, I think, we can probably fall into the trap really frequently of trying to protect our kids from everything. Mm-hmm. Right. But I think we need to focus more on protecting them through everything, not from it. Mm-hmm. I think we need, just take God's word, take your convictions, the ones that you're living out, and just take your kids along with you. I love that approach. It's awesome.
man, we're creeping up on an hour already. This has been really fascinating. I want a couple more questions. You mentioned the word legacy earlier in our conversation, and I try to ask most of my guests this question. You think of legacy and certain things come to mind, but if David were to leave an inspired legacy, what does that phrase mean to you?
I love that word in particular, both those words. My wife volunteers with a refugee resettlement organization, a nonprofit called Legacy Mission Village here. And it was in 2013 when I heard about the Exodus Road that I told her, hey, I don't want to just sing anymore. I want to do something. That's when I met with Matt from the Exodus Road. And when I got home, my wife found out late at night that I was interested in potentially actually joining in undercover operations. And she's like, what are you talking about? And Matt came over for breakfast, and that conversation the next morning, my wife said, David's going to join you. This will be our legacy. And I've never looked up what that word means, honestly. But I have a lyric that says, in ages to come, the sages will write. So raged the bearers of the light. So waged the few with all our might against the terrors of the night, with no sight in view from the depths to the heights. And so that's my answer. Whatever that means, that's what I think of when I think of inspired legacy.
I like it. Jacob, anything else you want to add?
I don't think anything from my end. I know your typical question, David, where can people look out for the Exodus Road? How can people look to help? Where can people find you on social media? Just tell us a little bit about that.
And keep track of Remedy Drive for that matter.
Yeah. / Remedy Drive or The Exodus Road, remedydrive.com. I'm David M for Michael, Zock, spelled like Zach. Pronounced like
what about social media?
Yeah, so Instagram and Twitter and Facebook is all David M. Zock, and then or Remedy Drive.
Well, we're going to link to all that in the show notes of this episode. David, this has been fascinating. I feel like we've just kind of scratched the surface on a lot of this stuff. So I could probably go another hour and just kind of hear all about all your stories, but I've really enjoyed this. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah. Thank you guys for doing this. And if we need to dive in deeper on another episode, I'd totally be willing. I enjoy these.
Oh, right on. Okay. Stay tuned. Guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend and subscribe to the show so you don't miss future episodes like the one you heard today. And be sure to check today's show notes for all the ways you can stay plugged into the Inspired Legacy, including my free download called 9 Ways to Be a Better Dad. You can sign up for my free weekly devotional called Inspired Inbox. And you can join the private Facebook group, a community of other like-minded men looking to become the best husbands and fathers they can be. So get plugged in. Like, subscribe, leave a review, and help more guys find the show because we need more men battling together for the sake of the next generation. Until next time, live inspired.